Hello, Janelle King here. We just finished the Draw Forth episode for Draw Forth, the Book Inside of You, and there were so many great questions. I want to make sure that I'm able to properly answer them all. So here is a question that came up from several people, honestly, and I want to make sure that I do it justice so that you guys really get what you were looking for. It's basically a question about process and timing. And I know I kind of walked through the story of how I came to different places in my book, but let's get a little more granular about the process and timing for how this whole thing came together. Okay, so go to the paper. Yay! So my process, right, I started with Let You Draw is Good Enough. That's that ebook that I did. That was February 13th of 2013. And at that point, that took basically 30 days to write. When I finished that, I was like, oh, wait, you know what? I have another book. But what's it going to be about? I don't know. I spent from mid-February to December 2013, just kind of thinking about things. And I had a file that I would kind of like put little notes into, and hey, this is an interesting article, let's rip that, or here's a really cool URL, let's rip that, and oh, let me write like a little idea, let's rip that, and all those things went into this file, which honestly it was a file that I had on my computer. And so I had just been throwing things in there, and this was this harvesting, one of these days I'm going to write this book. I'll just keep chucking things in that seem like they might have something to do with it. Well, back here I had said I'm going to do this book by 2013. Well, by the time I got here, I was like, oh crap. I haven't written a book. Crap, what am I going to do? So I looked at my calendar and I looked at this stuff and got completely overwhelmed. So I ended up letting a lot of this stuff go because I had accumulated so much stuff, I just could not really parse it. I couldn't really process what I had. I looked at my blog posts from the year to see what I had been writing about and the themes that really resonated with me. And then I drew this dude and the happy dude and thought about, if this is where my reader is now, where is it that that they would like to be with what I need to say, and what's the journey that gets them there? So I did that diagram. And then I was wondering about, okay, well, wait a minute, so who am I really talking about in terms of reader? And I did empathy map and identified some personas. Who exactly is this person? Because they could be anybody. So I wanted to get clear on who they were. And once I started to get clear on them, and I won't say that I was 100% clear, because the book I started to write was really schizophrenic. I was writing for multiple people. I was writing for an academic. I was writing for a business person. I was writing for a lay person. I was writing for someone who was in the industry, my contemporaries and my colleagues. And so when I sat down for the last 9 days of the year to write 9 sections, I got them done, and I did one a day, but they were all over the map because I hadn't been super clear on who I was writing it for and what book I was writing. Was I writing a textbook? Was I writing a guide that lay people could use? Was I writing a book that my colleagues, fellow visual practitioners would respect? What exactly was I doing here? And so I had pieces of all of that in here. So That's all right. That's part of the process. I ended up with manuscript 1, the first draft, which honestly were pieces of a book. It wasn't a book. I had components because I wrote it as, one component at a time. And I sat down for each section and I did what Dan Roan calls a 6x6. I love this tool, and it's actually a tool that I mentioned in the book, Draw Forth. You take, there's me, yay, needs the hair, fits me, and then there's my problem, which in this case it's my opportunity, or my question. And so for each of these pieces, each of these sections of the book, I would ask who, what, when, where, how/how much, and why. And I would draw out stuff for each section, or write and draw out stuff for each section. I've put up the materials from the actual session itself, so I can't show you examples of this. But one of the things might be visual language, right? Because my book teaches people visual language that they can use with others. So you would look at that question through these lenses. Who with visual language? Who needs it? Who uses it? Who cares? What about visual language? What is it? What can you do with it? Etc. When with visual language? When can you use it? Where? Where would you use it? Where does it show up? Where has it been used in the past? How or how much? You get the idea. So I would go through each of these pieces of the 6x6, and that would give me some clarity on what I was doing for each of these components for my book, each of these sections. And when I wrote these sections, it didn't necessarily, again, it wasn't a fabulous read. Like, wow, this is coherent from start to finish. This was me filling in all the facets on that section topic that I could think of. And so I ended up having these sheets, or these sections of the book, but they didn't read as a cohesive whole. It took 9 days to create these, which was great, but this is when I needed to really hand over some help. Oh, and the way that I was able to write these one a day, I showed up at a coffee house with my computer, and I would sit there and write, and my friend Jerry, who was also writing his book, would sit there and write, and we literally sat at a table head to head every day for 9 days, because we both had the goal that we wanted to get stuff done before the end of the year. So that helps with focus and support, which also helps for accountability, because if I didn't show up, he would be like, hey, where are you? I thought we were writing today. Or if he didn't show up, I'd be like, dude, I already got our table. Where are you? And motivation, when you have a partner like this, because there's a synergy that starts to happen when you're working on like goals together. And there's something really magical about that. And it just naturally fed into each of our motivation. And we could become cheerleaders for each other. Like, oh, how did that section go that you were working on? We know that, I know you were really trying to figure out what happens to the priest, because he's writing a historical fiction work. What happens to the priest and the knight in this section? And, oh, you know what? I just cracked it. It's great. And we would work and not talk. And then when we would both start to get a little antsy with the writing process, so after maybe 1 to 2 hours, we would have a natural break. We could talk to each other. We could dance around because the place played great music, and then we can dive back in and be like, no, okay, now we're going to go in. What are you working on? Okay, I'm going to work on this part next. How far are you? Okay, great. We can do it. Check in around 2 o'clock. Awesome. And we would just go and write, and it was great. So it led to these, I used this process, it led to these pieces, and So that's December 31st. Yay! Hit my goal, right? I have a book. Well, not exactly. I contacted an editor who I adore, and she agreed to work with me on this book. And I also had a friend of mine who's published several books, and I said to both of them, yeah, I am so excited. We got this book done, and I think it would be so cool if, because What You Draw is Good Enough has its anniversary, its 1-year anniversary on February 13th, 2014. I'm going to release my book on February 13th, 2014. And my mentor, she really just kind of like patted me on the hand. It was like, oh, honey, that's a really nice goal. Let's talk about what you need, what needs to happen to get you there. You may want to push that date out a little bit just to keep your sanity. But I was so excited because, hey, I had written the book, right? It's done. It's on paper. So how hard can it be to, like turn it into a finished book? But she, based on her recommendation, I agreed, okay, we'll push it out to July for the actual publication date. Dang, okay, July, whatever. July 15th, I think, was the date I was going for. In the meantime, I had my awesome editor, and we were going through these 4 levels of, or these 4 different rounds of editing, you can say. There's this big picture level where she was taking pieces of the book and making it into an actual, something that read like a book. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't feel like pieces anymore. It felt like a cohesive whole. And so we were looking for continuity of the concepts, the flow of the concepts, etc. And once we got that pretty nailed down, then we started looking at a paragraph level. And that was to really just kind of like start, taking the rough edges off of ideas and flows and giving them less of an edge so that they felt a little bit better. And then we took that down to a line level or a sentence level. And that was, additional polishing. And then, we got to a point where it was proofreading. And that's when you make the whole thing bright and shiny and lovely, and it's awesome. This takes time. It takes so much time because she would go over it, and then she would give me her notes, and we would sit down and we would talk about, hey, this is what I have questions, and this is what I saw, and that would give me ideas, and then I would have to go through and do my edits. And then I would give it back to her, and once we felt like this piece was taken care of, then we could move to the next. And so these processes take time, so give yourself time for that. At the same time, I had started, because I wanted to get my book done on July 15th, I started talking to designers. Because I knew my book was going to be visual and interactive, and I also knew that I can spend 9 hours picking out a font without blinking an eye, and that is not the best use of my time. So even though all my friends are like, Janelle, you could design your book, it's like, no, you don't want me to design this book. I need to get a professional to do it for me, and I will work with them, but I need to stay in my wheelhouse so I can get the book done, and they can go in their wheelhouse and they can make it look awesome. Well, so I started working with a design vendor and checked references, and it was a person was recommended, and even with all of that, they turned out to be the wrong choice of vendor for my project. And so the book itself was in pretty good shape to get started for a July, publication, but because the designer fell apart, that threw my timeline off in a major way. So now I was like, well, okay, I need to find a new designer. So we're going to go to September. We'll publish in September. And designer number one, wah, epic fail. Need a new designer. And because I was kind of gun shy from what had happened with the first designer, I thought, I should have gone with my gut, and I looked at books that I loved. And, as far as the layout goes. And one of them was The Digital Revolution by Sunny Brown. And so I opened up the book and I looked up in the cover, in the jacket cover, it said designed by Design Good Studios. So I contacted them. It's like, why not? And I wrote them this email, and I was like, hi, you don't know me from Adam, and my colleague, Sunny, put out this book, and you guys designed it and did an amazing job, and I would love to talk with you about the possibility of putting together the design for my book, because you guys did such a great job, and we're kind of similar fields. So could we talk about that? And they wrote back and they're like, sure, we'd love to. What's your timeline for publication? And I said, oh, well, September. And they were like, oh, that's kind of fast for everything that we would need to do. Is there any way that you could push the date? Because remember, my original deadline was July, and the designer totally fell apart in July. So I didn't start looking for another designer and really getting some traction there until August. So yeah, can you design my whole book in a month, please, even though you have other projects? So that ended up pushing my timeline to November. Because if you want it done right, have a professional do it. I thought, well, maybe the designer, maybe you guys could do a sample chapter, and I can use it as a template and design it myself. That lasted for about 15 seconds before I thought I was going to die. So I contacted them and was like, I think that was a bad idea on my part. And they're like, yeah, no, we think let's just do all of it. It's like, thank you. I'm trying to make life easier here, and I'm just making it a mess. So let the professionals do what they do. You focus on writing your awesome book, okay, as far as process goes. So let's go back to that. While all this stuff is going on, they're making the book awesome and pretty. I have this moment of like, oh crap, that's right. I'm also supposed to publish this thing. Oops, forgot about that. So I had to also get ISBNs and register with the Library of Congress. And in order to do that, I needed to set up an imprint. And, I need to set up accounts at CreateSpace and Ingram Spark, and all these other pieces that are just logistics for getting the book ready to go. And at the same time, it's like, oh wait, what type of cover needs to be done? Hey, let's get some feedback from people, because I can share with the designer what I would like to see happen. But the cover that I originally drew out as a possibility that's not what it ended up being. And thanks to opening myself up and opening the book up to feedback from other people, which is scary as heck, let me tell you, because it's your baby and it's not quite ready and you're sharing it. It's scary. But they help, you guys help make it better by seeing the things that I can't see. Because when you're writing this book, or when you're writing your book, you get so into it, you can't see anymore. And so you need those other perspectives, whether it's your designer, whether it's your editor, whether it's a proofreader, whether it's a beta reader, a friend who can read this thing for you and give you some fresh insights. All of these pieces are necessary for you to be able to draw forth the best work that you can do. And so for the cover, I was really, my ego was really latched onto, no, I want the cover to be like this. And thank goodness for the design team and for you guys, because the cover's awesome now, and it's totally because I could let go and let you guys do what you do best. So let's see what else is going on. So we have this process. They're doing the design. While they are doing the design, I was like, oh crap, that's right. I was also supposed to do some illustrations for these things, because I wasn't able to illustrate while I was writing because I didn't know what I needed to draw. And during this revision process, it kept changing, and I knew what I'd like to see, but it wasn't until the content was nailed that I could really start to move into, all right, now let's start drawing some images that are going to match up with that. So I would draw the images on paper. I started off doing my drawings digitally and found that I was driving myself crazy that way because with the digital, you know, with working digitally, you have the opportunity to, like, if you drew the line and it didn't hit quite the way you wanted, you can go back and erase it. Well, drawings were taken for frickin' ever. So I thought, you know, I'm a graphic facilitator, I'm a stick figure strategist, I work in real time. My illustrations for this book need to just be paper illustrations done in real time. So I would just get pads of paper and just start busting one out at a time. I would go to a different coffee house than where I wrote the book. I found that there were places that I could do certain things. So I would go to Lestat's to write, but I couldn't draw at Lestat's. I could go to the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf to draw, but I couldn't write there. I couldn't edit at either of those. So I started buying Amtrak passes from San Diego to Santa Barbara, like those 10-trip, you know, those 10-pack passes to ride the train, and it would take 5 hours to go from San Diego to Santa Barbara. 2 hours later, there would be another train taking you back. So it would be an all-day event. But what I would do is I would print a copy of the book, or I'd have a copy, and I would come with my markers, and I would spend 5 hours reading on the train, doing my, you know, making my comments and my edits. I'd get to Santa Barbara, I would have lunch, or I'd hang out at the ocean. Fabulous. It's such a great way to work. And then 2 hours later, when the next train was going back to San Diego, I would hop on the train. I'd have all the notes from the morning, but I would have had a break. So I'd have the notes, and I could open it up, and I'd open up my computer and just start making the edits into the manuscript. And then I can send it over to my editor, and we could, you know, it worked really well. And I was so productive that way. Hopping on the train and getting stuff done is, hands down, one of the best things I could do for this book. So looking at process again. All right, so we've got the process, we've got the design, everything's set. Once the design's done, the illustrations are in place, the accounts are set up, this leads to a finished PDF. Oh, and I have to show you this because this is awesome. PDF that the designer sends, that gets uploaded to CreateSpace and to Ingram-Spark. And that's where the book gets printed. So the first time we sent in the PDF for printing, it came back, and it was that, wait, where is it? There we go. It was that thin, like really thin, shockingly thin. Really, really thin. And thought, that is just not right. What's going on here? Oh, the layout of the PDF was wrong, and so it's not printing correctly. Yeah, that's a problem. So we had to go through a series of print galleys. And those print galleys are absolutely essential. Do it more than once, because this time, you know, this one was like, oops, our general layout for the, you know, for the document was wrong for the type of printing that we needed to do. But then we, you know, you would start getting these proofs, and you would just spend time making notes inside of them, like, oh, whoops, that was supposed to be something else. And just catching little, you know, little things that needed to be changed. You want to do this when your book is in print form because, and I'm using really light marker apparently when I was doing this, and I did this on the train as well. You want to catch everything that you can in print because you're not going to see it the same way as when you are looking on a computer. You know, it's easier for you to see what you mean to see when you're working on a computer as opposed to when you're actually looking at your book in the flesh. Completely different experience. Get a bunch of markers, have your galleys, and that's why I have all those binders of the versions of my book. Print it out, read through it, mark the crap out of it for everything that you catch, your ideas, fold it back in, and with your galleys, mark the crap out of it, make notes for the design team, they can clean it up, and you'll end up having an end product that makes you proud when you give yourself the opportunity to actually look at these things. So yeah, so we did the print galleys, and I got after doing those rounds of edits with the print galleys, I got the final PDF on my birthday in Nashville. And I was so excited, and I was, checking it one more time, just one more time to make absolutely sure. I had looked at this a billion times, and then sure enough, there was one little change that was so obvious. We forgot to add numbers to or page numbers to the table of contents because everything had been moved around. So all the page numbers were like page 12 on the table of contents. It's like, oh, yeah, need to catch that one. So no matter how many times you look at it, and no matter how many people look at it, there is always something else to catch. So make sure you include that in your process too, and give yourself time to do that too. So I caught it, I sent it back to the designer. It's like, please, is there any way you can get this? I mean, we were so close to having this done. If you can make this one edit, I'm not even going to look at it anymore. I'm just done. I can't look at this anymore. Everyone has looked at this. We are no longer seeing stuff. We'll upload it, and we'll just make it go live. So Lord love the design team. They made that one last change. They corrected the page numbers on the table of contents, and I got it the next day, uploaded it. So my book unofficially went live the day after my birthday in Nashville, Tennessee. I was so excited and proud. I went out and bought myself a pair of boots because you got to celebrate as part of your process. You have to. There's so much that you're doing. You have to honor it. You have to celebrate even the tiniest things, like, oh, that son of a gun paragraph that I've been working on forever and it just isn't coming out right. I finally got it. Celebrate that. What you are doing is so close to you. You have to honor the work that you're putting into it. Gosh, this one's turning into like a whole separate hour-long conversation in itself, isn't it? Okay, get to the point. I think I already have. Yeah, so it took a long time of just thinking, an intense period of making that baby, if you will, 9 days to make that baby. But from there, it took a whole book pregnancy's worth of time to get to the point where you actually had a book that was ready to be shared with the world. So that's a little more granular view of the process and the timing for my book coming out. It ended up having a hard launch or an official launch on Amazon on Black Friday in 2014, so the day after Thanksgiving, which turned out great, turned out to be pretty good timing. So yeah, I could keep talking about this one too. You can tell I'm going to stop myself because there are other questions. If you have questions, you know where to find me. You can reach me at Janelle at JanelleKing.com, or you can always tweet me because I do love me some Twitter, and you can reach me there at Janelle King. All right, thank you so much, guys, for the questions, and I will see you soon. Thanks.